Yeah, pitch black night in my soul. Walking in this desert all alone.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of the Catholic Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Padilla, and I'm super excited to be here for episode 1. This is crazy. Like, honestly, this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time now. And honestly, it's kind of overdue at this point. So a lot of you listening in right now may know me from Instagram, or you know of my story from Instagram. At Catholic Warrior Fitness is the Instagram. But I just wanted to start today's episode off by just explaining the objective of the podcast, what I'm trying to accomplish here, and also just giving you guys some background on me and diving more into my story and how I got here and my reversion and all that stuff, because I think it's important just to set the tone. But just to start off, so you guys know, the objective really of the podcast is to further the conversation of masculinity within the Catholic Church, right? Now, if you follow me on Instagram and you've seen my page and my content and stuff, right, I'm a Catholic men's fitness coach. And so, I blend these worlds together, our faith, the beauty of our faith of Catholicism, and also just being a man, getting after it, working out, training, lifting weights. Like, these are things that, of course, I love, right? And they blend perfectly together. And we'll have plenty of conversation on this for other episodes and other guests that I want to have on as well. But for the most part, just so you guys know the structure of it, I want to include you as much as I can, right? So I'm going to ask my audience for questions that you guys want answers to, topics that I could go over, because the majority of the episodes, unless I have a guest coming in, is going to be me solo, right? And I want to go over these topics. I want to further the conversation because I think this is something that's very important. We're at a crucial time in church history, and personally, I've seen a big crisis regarding our men in the church, in the world in general, but specifically within our church, right? So it's important that we have these conversations, and I pray that the Holy Spirit will guide all of this for whatever fruit comes of this. Hopefully God takes us very far, as long as He wants me to do it. So that's one part of it, right? Also, guys, just be expecting that I will have guests. I want to speak to several big Catholic influencers, but they don't have to be influencers, right? I just want to have important conversations within our faith, and specifically, again, for masculinity within the faith, right? So plenty to come, right? Now, I want to also dive into my background today and just give you guys a chance and a glimpse into my life and my reversion story. Not only that, into the faith, but really just starting back from the beginning so you can get to know me a little bit more. So I'm going to dive right into that, and hope you guys enjoy this first episode, just setting the stage here so you can get to know me a little bit better. So again, my name is Isaac. I grew up in a little town called Las Cruces, New Mexico. And, I grew up in a very culturally Catholic background. My dad's Mexican, my mom's Hawaiian. And growing up, we didn't really know our faith. And it's me and my sister. I have a younger sister. She's 2 years younger than me. Pretty normal childhood. And we went through the motions, unfortunately. Like, it was Mass every Christmas and Easter. We were the Creasters for sure. A few Masses throughout the year, stuff like that. But I didn't know my faith at all. And my parents didn't know theirs, so obviously there was nothing to really teach from their end. They got married super young. They were high school sweethearts. And, that's kind of how it happens, unfortunately, in a lot of Mexican families. That's another entirely different conversation that we could have on another episode. But anyway, so that's how we grew up, right? And I grew up playing baseball. My dad was a fantastic baseball player, so he really pushed that across for me. And I got really good at that. I played all over the country. I played in freaking Puerto Rico. I played in Oklahoma and Florida and California and just all over the place. New York. And I was very competitive with baseball. It was the first love of my life, like truly loved the game, right? Now, like I said, pretty normal childhood. My dad was building a home building company, and he kind of blew up a little bit, and we probably moved up to like upper middle class. And that was our life. We were just kind of privileged, a little bit more privileged kids. And we grew up in a good neighborhood, had a good life, man. And then I turned about 11 years old. So around that time in my life, right before middle school, was when the first real big wave of adversity in my life occurred. Like really the only thing I had experienced that was tough yet. And that was my parents' divorce. And so I was about 11 years old when my parents got divorced. And I think it was real hard because nobody saw it coming. It's like, well, we were kids, so maybe we were naive. Maybe everybody else around my mom and dad could see it coming, but we definitely didn't because they hit it well. I never saw my parents fight. There's never any signs of divorce. My life literally went from happy mom and dad, normal happy life, to the next day, mom telling us, "Hey guys, we're getting a divorce," and that's it. So it was really life changing for me and my sister, because it was so, I guess, stark of a difference overnight, and so that was really painful, and that really kind of was this beginning of the spiral that I took for that big part of my life, my adolescence. But that beginning portion of that, going down that rabbit hole, was pretty bad. I was exposed to pornography right around that time and developed a habit with that early, unfortunately. Like I think a lot of young kids are, little boys and little girls, unfortunately. That's a whole different topic that we can get into. But, I got into that, and, by 11, 12 years old, I was already developing a porn habit and masturbating, going down that rabbit hole, right? Only took 2 years for me to start having sex. I was having sex by the time I was 13. And so that's pretty horrible, obviously, thinking about that now, just going down this rabbit hole. You guys can see where I'm going with this. It just gets worse and worse and worse over time. That's what sin does. It just eventually will just corrode you to a point where you can't even recognize, good and bad anymore. And I'm sharing all this and being personal with you guys because I really want to set the stage of, how far God has taken me in my life, because it's amazing. So anyway, I'm getting into these bad habits. Shortly after that, I probably start smoking weed and drinking, and it's just a bad time in my life. There's a lot of turmoil in my life at that point, right? Now, around the time where I get to high school, I had been playing baseball, of course, like I said, pretty competitively. That was, the love of my life. But also, this is so weird. It sounds crazy, but I started playing the trumpet when I was in 6th grade, and I got really good at the trumpet for some reason. I just loved it, and I fell in love with music, and it was this weird dynamic because I was this band kid, but I wasn't like a geeky band kid. Like I was, this rock star baseball player, like a good athlete, I was even a quarterback for my 8th grade team. We won the city championship, led that team 7-0, right? So like I've always had that athlete mentality, like a winner's mentality. And then it's such a weird mix, but I just started playing music, right? And so by the time I get to high school, I developed such a love for music that I decided to quit baseball. That was a big deal. My dad was pissed. I quit baseball. I had made varsity my freshman year. Like I was good. I was a good ball player. But I pissed off my dad by, choosing the music route instead. But whatever. So that was my focus. And honestly, by my freshman year, I was absolutely determined and committed. But because by this point, it was more than just playing the trumpet. I had started making music, singing and writing. I taught myself how to play the piano. I really loved R&B, always had growing up, and hip hop. And I wanted to develop myself like as an artist, as a solo artist. And it was solidified in my heart. That's what I wanted, right? Like I was gonna go get it. You know, how people struggle with what they're gonna be and what they want to do when they grow up. I didn't have that struggle. It was just I'm gonna be literally a famous artist, a musician. I was locked in on that 100%. And so everything else in my life at that time, that's all my life was, you know. And throughout high school, I continued the degeneracy of what the life I was already living, which I was trying to basically live the life of a musician already. I was just still in my parents' house and trying to do it sneaky, I guess, you know, sneaking out of the house, drinking, doing drugs, making music, just doing my thing, right? And so around that time, like junior, senior year, I get a scholarship to the state of New Mexico or University of New Mexico, which is in Albuquerque. It's about 3 hours north of my hometown. And so I head on up to Albuquerque. I didn't know what I was doing. I was a dumb kid. I just took the opportunity because in my eyes, I was like, all right, I can get away from my hometown, get away from my parents and my family and all the kids that I know. And I've always had that like roaming, wandering kind of wild spirit where I like to go on adventure and, you know, go see the world. I always wanted to do that, right? I always loved that. And so I dipped out. I was 17 or 18, right? And so I get to Albuquerque and I loved it. I mean, I loved the freedom of not having to, you know, even be involved with my parents in that sense. And I thought I was so big and grown. You know, I had this girlfriend at the time. She was living in Denver and we were doing this like long distance kind of thing. And 3 months into college, I decided to make the smart decision to drop out rather of all my classes. Granted, you know, this is all scholarship money. I dip out and my whole plan is I'm going to go to Denver with this chick, right? Long story short, doesn't work out. Second wave of adversity. I think I get cheated on. I don't remember for sure. I don't want to, you know, put that on her if it actually wasn't the case, but I think it did happen. You know, I don't know. Whatever. Heartbroken, in shambles, very emotional kid, very volatile and unstable. And I go back home. I moved back to Las Cruces, right? Because I didn't know what else to do. And at this point, I felt like I just screwed my life up and life was over. You know, I pissed away my freaking full ride scholarship and I ruined it, right? And I was just in a real low and bad place. And, you know, I was at home for a few months, back to doing the stupid things with my friends, going out, drinking, partying, doing drugs, hooking up with chicks, like living that life that I was comfortable and used to, right? And, you know, during that time, my dad was the one to actually call me out. And he was like, you know, what are you doing? Like, you already screwed up big time. You know, you threw away, this is your fault. You threw away the scholarship. And then now you're here acting like you're some hotshot in the city, this little tiny city. You act like, you know, you're some big dog here. And he was right. You know, I had this little following in the city for my music, and I just thought I was so popping. But, you know, he helped me realize, like, damn, like, I really haven't done anything with my life, and what am I going to do, you know? Because I love music so much that's all I wanted for my life. I still wanted to just do only that. That's the lifestyle I wanted, right? And so around that time, me and my dad, we take a trip to California, and his sister's over there. My tia, she lives in a little place called Oxnard, which is a place that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'll explain later. But so we get to Oxnard, we have a trip, and my tia mentions to me, she's like, you know, mijo, if you want a place to stay, you can come out here with me. Like, have a couch for you, basically. And just a little light bulb, like, click. That's all I needed to hear. And it just reframed my whole thinking. I was like, oh, man, like, I could go to California, you know? And from that day on, like, when we were leaving from that trip, I solidified it in my heart. I was like, I'm going. Like, what else am I going to do, right? Nothing to lose. I'm going. And so I just locked it in my heart. I was like, I'm going to do what it takes to get there. I went back home. I found some little stupid job for AT&T. I was like the guy on the phone that was helping the old people navigate. They thought they broke their TV, and I was like, hey, did you just turn the TV on? Like that guy. I had that phone job for 6 months, right? And I saved every penny that I possibly could. And I lived with my grandparents. It was a very humbling time in my life, eating sandwiches and all the food that they gave me. Thank God for them. But I managed to save up a little bit of money. I saved up like $3,000, and I moved to Oxnard, California, January of 2017. Okay. Dang, it seems like forever ago now. But I'll never forget it. I'll never forget getting to LA and feeling, because I spent the night in LA with one of my best friends from here. Actually, him and his dad went on the ride with me just because my dad felt safer that way. He like begged me to do that. But anyway, we all get there in LA, and I was so starstruck that night. I remember we were eating at some place right there on Melrose, a place called Bake Wings. And I was so starstruck. Like, it actually was very scary. I was just thinking like all these crazy thoughts like, dude, what are you doing? Why did you do this? How are you going to make it? I was just scared, And it was also exciting on the other hand, I will say that. So, I moved to Oxnard. Next day, I get settled in. My tia, she had a job lined up for me for the place that she worked at. And all is good, Like I start working, and I'm working on music, and I start to experience life in a crazy way at 19 years old. And still, more than anything, I crave this lifestyle of a musician. Like, I want to smoke weed all day. I want to drink all night, go to the studio. I want to hook up with chicks and like get money. And I just wanted that life so bad. And so, I was a horrible employee. I was probably fired 4 or 5 times and rehired like in the course of living in LA. And, over the course of time there, I just slowly was warped more and more and more because I just delved further into sin as I was living there, right? To the point where I was just a complete degenerate, like fully. And it's crazy how that happens over time, but I'm talking like over the course of 4 to 5 years or so of trying to get after with music. And mind you, it's not like nothing was happening. My career was slowly building up over time. And I actually got to a point where I had a pretty decent following. Like I had good numbers for my streams and stuff. Like I was at a point where I had millions of streams. Like I thought I was going to blow up, right? I was doing it. But the lifestyle that I lived was just slowly eroding me, right? I was at a point where I was damn near living out of my car, right? I had no money all the time, like no money. I'll wake up days and I'd have negative like 20 or 30 bucks in my account, and I'd have to DoorDash the entire day just to get back up to zero so I wouldn't have another fee stack up on me the next day and be negative 60 or something like that, right? But I was just a lazy, immature kid. And the bottom line is I didn't want to handle any responsibility. I just wanted to live life my way. And that was my way, right? I made my parents sick. Everybody back home, they're very worried about me. I was at a point where I was reaching out to just kids I knew from childhood, not even my friends for real. They were just like acquaintances. I was reaching out to people for money. I was super desperate. Like I went through a very dark period of time during that period. Bad, very bad. And so that was around the beginning of my reversion. And just for some context in the background, right? My dad at this point had already reverted back to the faith, right? Like I told you guys, he didn't grow up understanding his faith at all. So there was nothing to teach us, but he reverted back hardcore. And he had been reverted for at least 2 or 3 years by this point in my life. This is around 2019, somewhere around there, right? And so he really was pushing me hard because I was into all this nonsense like astrology and like all this demonic stuff over there. And he, as a good father should, was trying to just help me and was trying to revert me, you know? He just came off very aggressive, and I didn't want to hear it. Like, nobody wants to hear the truth when they're living a lifestyle like that. And so I pushed back against him really hard, right? So in the background, he kind of just lets off, right? And when I'm over there in LA, I have a pretty significant event in the journey. And one day, it was my tia's birthday. We went to a little place called The Collection in Oxnard. It's like a little outdoor shopping center and stuff. And I went to the food court because I was hungry. I went with my cousin. And when I'm in the food court, I'm literally so shook up by this girl in the food court and how beautiful she is that I stop and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to her. Like, I have to say something. And mind you guys, that's not my game. I never like spit game to girls and like pulled up to them or anything like that. I just never did that, right? And she was with her friend. She was eating, and I was so nervous. But I knew in my gut that I would hate myself if I didn't go say what's up to her, right? And so I muster up the courage to just go walk up and say hi. And I do, and I say some stupid line. I asked to eat with them, which is the stupidest thing now looking back. I was like, can I sit down and eat with you ladies? So stupid. But that's my wife, right? That's my wife now. And it's crazy how God makes all this stuff align, but that was the day that I met my wife. And, you know, we had this relationship, and it started off very slow and very unorthodox. And for some reason, I just couldn't figure out why my wife was so different. She was such a unicorn. And mind you guys, like, I had experience with a lot of girls. I mean, I don't say that to like brag because I think that's stupid anyway, you know, but I did. And I could see and read patterns of women, and like, I lived that life. So my wife, when I met her, was so contrary and different to all that it just really intrigued me. And that was how we met, right? And over the course of a few months, I fell in love with her, and it was at a crazy time in my life because I didn't really want any commitment or relationship or anything like that because I thought my music career was going to blow up and take off. Like, I was at a point where I had the most streams that I ever had. I had a fan base. People were waiting on my album. I was going to drop this album. Like, things were happening, or at least I thought I was at that point where it was going to happen, right? And so I moved in with her after a few months of dating. And she took care of me. You know, I didn't have anything. She would literally feed me, and she paid all the bills while I sat in her apartment and smoked weed all day and brought all my homies over and made music and, you know, trashed the house, never picked up after myself, didn't have any responsibility, and then complained about her. Like, I was such a loser at that point in my life. And I thought I was so cool and just so, you know, like I was the man. But I was so lost. It's crazy. I couldn't see that at the time. But so eventually, like shortly after that, she gets pregnant. And that was a big moment in my life because, you know, I didn't know what to do because I was broke and I didn't have anything, and I really didn't know her that well. But at the same time, I was happy and excited, and I wanted to be a father, and like all these different emotions hit me like that. And so the best thing I could think of was, okay, let's move back home to New Mexico because I have a lot of support there, and we're just going to figure this out. Like, we're going to raise this baby. You know, we're going to get to know each other more. I was falling in love with her, and I was down. Like, I was down to just do this, and there was that big excitement inside too. Even though I was scared and I felt all these crazy emotions, I was excited to be a dad. I really was. And so this is around 2020, beginning of 2020, right? And so we moved back to New Mexico. We pack up the apartment in a night, literally, and leave because the country's getting crazy. I can read the writing on the wall with COVID and everything going on. And so we left right in the nick of time. And so we get back to New Mexico. I move into my mom's house in my old room that I grew up in, basically. And that was the most humbling thing that could have happened to me. And as I say all this and I think this out loud, I rewind it, I just think about how amazing God's grace is that will give somebody. And he was giving me the whole time. He was with me the whole time, right? And so we get there and we settle in. Life is hard. I have no money. In fact, I just got fired from my other job at that point. And it sucks. It really sucks. Like, she's pissed off all the time. She just left home. I feel very alone, and I feel like my career's fallen off because, everything's just in shambles. And one day, she starts having some complications, and I just knew when she told me that day that something was going to go wrong. I just had that feeling in my gut. That was my intuition. Like something's off. And so we went to an urgent care and we went to go, check on the baby and everything. And when we got there, like I said, I had that same eerie feeling. I'll never forget my mom and my stepdad driving us there and just feeling so like defeated already, like it was already over. And I couldn't shake that. And I wanted it so bad to not be true, but I just knew in my heart that something was going bad. And so get into the little urgent care. They check us in. We go to the room. And, unfortunately, we lost our baby. And that was tough. In my heart, she was a girl, although we didn't know. But I named her Kamea. And that was just that was the singular event in my life that just shattered me. Like, it just completely broke me down. And I didn't know what to do in my life at that point. I was broken. I really was. It killed me. So I spiraled into this terrible depression. And every single day was just hell. And I drug my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, I drug her down with me. I spiraled down with all my habits: drugs, drinking, pornography, lust, like all of these, my food addiction, right? Because I was fat growing up. All of those things, I just tripled down. And, my wife too. I took her with me. We were both just broken, lost souls, truly. It was the most painful time period of my life. And one day, bringing my dad right back into it, one day my dad invites me over to have a beer because he kind of knows or catches wind of what's going on, and he invites me over for a beer. And I was reluctant because I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear my dad talk about the saints in the 3rd century and why the Catholic Church is the true church. And I didn't care. I didn't want to hear any of it. I already knew what was going on. So I was very reluctant. And I told him. And he's like, "Look, we're just gonna have a beer, all right?" And so we're sitting outside on the rock wall at his house having a beer, and somehow or another, gets brought up, and he brings up Eucharistic miracles is what my dad brings up. He's like, "You ever heard of Eucharistic miracles?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about, you crazy old bastard." No, but honestly, for some reason, I was open enough and I was curious enough to know what he was talking about, because it did really intrigue me. I was like, what? The host turns into a piece of flesh? For real? And I kind of just went down this curiosity rabbit hole that night. He planted a very important seed that night. And I went home, and the same night, I went down a YouTube doom scroll rabbit hole of Eucharistic miracles. Every video that I could find, I read up every little thing that I could see. And that night, the veil was removed for me. And I had to make a decision, a very, very important decision, because although I knew nothing about the church at all, not a single thing about Catholicism, right? I was even at a point where I literally denounced God in LA. In my heart, I knew what I had just witnessed and learned about was real. It was real. God convicted me right then and there that night. I'll never forget it. I was laying right next to my wife late at night, in the bed, my phone, scared because I knew it was true. And the thought was, like, this is true. I'm either going to accept the fact that this is true, or I'm going to turn my back and pretend like I just didn't see what I just saw. That was honestly the feeling. And I could not turn away. It's like I was exposed to something so massive that I had no idea about my whole life. I'd never heard of this. No one ever taught me this. No one in the church ever said this. Never have I once seen this. And it was amazing to me. Like, I was mind blown. I was like, how have I not known this? And what is this? And why? Why is this real? Like, I accepted it that night. That was a big moment because I solidified the fact that what I saw was true. And because it was true, I needed to figure out why. It's crazy how God will do this, because I love hearing reversion stories and conversion stories because it is all so just detailed and beautiful, and it's literally a miracle. And so that was the night, right? Now, guys, I wake up the next morning, full-blown demonic attacks. Full-blown. I had never experienced anything like that in my life. I've never once had a panic attack. I've never once had anxiety, like all these things that you could write it off as, right? For all the naysayers that say, oh, it wasn't a demonic attack, it was blah, blah, blah. No. This was me being attacked by demons, like 100%. Why? Because I just made the craziest 180 in my spiritual life that could possibly happen. And all of the demons that were watching me my entire life and tempting me and not forcing me because they can't force you to do anything, but tempting me to go down this path of destruction, now saw that night, probably because salute to my guardian angel. What a soldier. Can't wait to meet you, boy. Cannot wait to meet you. Straight up. Man, I get amped up talking about this. But no, they saw that happen. They watched it, and it pissed them off because they know you take a step towards the truth, what can really save your soul, it's a wrap, especially when they've had you tied down for years, like they had me since I was 11 years old, right? So I got attacked. I literally remember hyperventilating on my floor in that room and begging for a Bible and clutching it, and just I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know how to explain it. I felt like I couldn't freaking breathe. Crazy dream. Didn't even feel like a dream. Seeing the demonic, like, it was terrifying. And that was the very beginning of my reversion, right? Now, this was a very dramatic, intense reversion initially, because what I had experienced that night carried on for months, like literally months after that. And it developed further in my relationship. My relationship with my wife got strained more. I lost all my friends. I literally felt as if God isolated me entirely. Now that I look back, I think that's what he did. There was no consolation. I could go to no one. Not my dad, not my mom, not my wife, not my homies, not the weed, not the drink, none of it. It did nothing. And it sucked. Like, I'm just going to be real with you guys. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. But God was giving me an option to change my life. Now that I look back, I could see that clearly. And as time carried on, I almost lost my wife. I got further into my faith. I learned more. It was baby steps. Baby steps. Little by little, I learned. I went to Mass, right? I went back to Mass. Little by little, I went to my first confession that I had been to since my first Holy Communion. Crazy, right? This is what this looked like. This is how God's grace works, okay, with a broken man like me, all right? This is a hilarious picture, but it paints it perfectly. I was at a point where I was learning how to pray the rosary and smoking my blunts during. Like, I would roll up a fat blunt and then learn on Laudate how to pray my rosary outside and smoke a big old stoink outside while I'm going through the little virtual rosary on the Laudate Catholic app. Like, that was where I was at. This is the honest truth. And God gave me the grace to go through that trial little by little, by little, by little. And as I showed up, I started to lose the fear that I had day by day. He was removing that fear out of my heart. And like I said, I was losing people left and right. I was getting criticized by people left and right. People were questioning, what the hell's going on with Isaac? Now you think you're better than us now, right? You think you're some high and mighty guy now, all that. I went through all of it, just as Christ warns us, just as Christ tells us explicitly. Oh yeah, they hate you? Well, guess what? They hated me first, right? The hardest battle I ever fought. It got to a point where me and my wife, we got to rent a house. My dad gave us a house to rent. And during that period, I proposed to my wife because I wanted to marry her. That was a big part of this decision or this time period for me. I made that decision to get married in the church, right? And so we were going through marriage prep. I was down for it, but I'm sure my wife didn't like to hear it. When I first spoke to Father Kevin, the priest who married us, he said, yeah, you guys can't live together. And I was kind of expecting of it, but my wife wasn't there yet in her faith. And I knew it was going to be an issue because we went from this whole lifestyle to where I was at then, which is I'm trying to become a devout Catholic now, right? So I didn't have a place to go. Neither did she. I didn't have money like that. And we negotiated on a middle ground, which was the fact that I would live separately within our house. So I had my own room and she had her own room. And that was very strenuous on our relationship, specifically for her, right? But the first night in my own little room, I got attacked so bad by the demons that I literally thought I was losing my mind. Honestly, that's the only way I could explain it. I was like, I have to be going insane. The things I was seeing during my sleep, some of it wasn't even in my sleep. Like, I could clearly see my room and it wasn't sleep paralysis. Like, they were real. I could see them. Terrifying. And I literally was just frozen in fear in my room. The only thing I can possibly think of was just asking Christ to help me, right? Specifically to Our Lady. I had this rosary. I still have my rosary sitting over there on my table. But I would just clutch my rosary and that's all I had some days, some nights. For months, guys, months. I thought I was a crazy man. I thought I was loony. Straight up. And eventually I accepted. I just submitted. And I remember thinking, okay, God, this was my prayer. Just make me strong enough. That's it. That's all I asked him. Because it was clear as day that this was whatever was supposed to happen, I wasn't going to stop it. So I literally had only that left. I was like, just make me strong enough for the next day, you know? And he did. He damn sure did make me strong enough just for the day, every single day. Now, I couple this period of time in my life with a lot of self-improvement. I worked with my first ever fitness coach, Shane Patrick. Salute to my boy, Shane Patrick. Got me completely ripped up in 3 or 4 months. Physically, I'd never seen my body before like that, ever in my entire life. Couple that with waking up 3:30 in the morning, pray my rosary, sip my coffee, read the daily readings, journal every single day. Stacking all that up while sharpening my faith, I felt like a weapon over time. And that's all grace. It's something that Christ gave to me. And it's a crazy story to think about, where I came from to what was happening to me, right? And that's something that I will never take for granted. I feel as if I truly am living on borrowed time, and I owe Christ my life. I owe him everything, because still to this day, I think back, how many times was I on that freeway in California, blasted out of my mind high and drunk behind a wheel, riding next to the mom with 4 or 5 kids in her car, probably, right? Or the innocent son who belonged to some good Catholic family, or whatever. You get what I'm saying? I could have died and immediately been punished in eternal flames in hell forever. It would have been over forever. But he didn't allow it. And to this day, guys, I'll be honest, I don't know why. I don't mean that in some dark sense, or, like I'm trying to question him or anything like that. I truly am amazed. I truly am like, why did you do this for me, God? Like, you did me the biggest favor that anybody could have ever done. You've given me the truth. And so I constantly remind myself of the gift that I have been given by him, because it is by him and it is for him, absolutely and entirely. And during that period of my life was when I solidified in my heart what has been created by him now, which is the company that I have, Catholic Warrior Fitness. Even the word Catholic Warrior. At that time, I was becoming a Catholic warrior, straight up. I would go to mass. I would look at the men around me in the pew. I'd see men out of shape, couldn't keep up with their kids. I see all that. And I would just think, we need this. This process that I'm going through in my life right now, the education that I had that unfortunately a lot of Catholics don't get, right? A lot of Catholics don't know their faith. A lot of Catholic men are out of shape and overweight, and they don't like what they see in the mirror. They don't work out. They don't work hard. All those things need to come together. And that's my philosophy here, Catholic Warrior Fitness, right? That's the story. Now, fast forward a little bit more than that. From that point, me and my wife, we get married in the faith. We moved back to California for a little bit this past couple years, and we have our first son, Malachi, my little baby. My wife's pregnant again now with our baby girl. She's coming in September. And so God has just blessed my life in a way that I could never repay him for. And I just want you guys to know this is my way of repaying him. Like, if I can help any one of you, if I can touch any one of your hearts or move any one of you closer to him, through him, that's how I can honor him. That's how I've always seen it, right? And, it's kind of a long-winded story and introduction to you guys, but I just want you to get to know me. You will over time. I hope you guys can stick around for more episodes. Most of them probably won't be this long. Honestly, they'll be a little bit shorter, besides the interviews and stuff that I'm going to have. But I just want you all to know, again, from the bottom of my heart, I want to serve all of you. And the best way I can do that is just by being me and showing you what I've been through and being real about it and being honest, because I know that there are so many men and women just like me who have had this kind of experience in the church, maybe who are still away from the church, that never came back. Like, I wasn't raised in some 10-person, Catholic family that goes to the traditional Latin Mass and they know everything about theology. Like, I was not cut from that cloth. I'm not saying anything bad about that. That's amazing. That's fantastic that, we have families that are strong like that. It's how it should be, honestly. But I hope I can reach those of you who are a little further outside of that and what I like to say is rough around the edges, right? I'm a little rough around the edges. It's just how I am. But, if you think back and you look through scripture, it's not a very uncommon thing to find guys like me that Christ will come and rename and give him a new heart, give him a new life, right? So that's a beautiful thing about it. But that's my story, guys, and I'm sticking to it. And I just hope that you can take some of this with you in whatever way, right? Now, keep up with me on Instagram. You can find me at Catholic Warrior Fitness, because I want to involve you guys. I want to build a community here. Eventually, I'm going to build a Patreon. I want to give back to you guys big time. And the topics week to week, I want to hear from you guys. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to hear about? I'm an open book. Shoot the question. I'm a big dummy. I'm going to preface that right now, but I'm just going to be me, and let's have some great discussion. That's what this is all about, right? So, ending with my favorite prayer, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Amen.
Yeah, pitch black night in my soul. Walking in this desert all alone.